When I record podcasts, I like to stay hydrated. Who knew talking could be so hard? My favourite drink to have to hand is Lifeline's Hydro OG. It's a tried and tested product for me. It helped me and my team complete a 24-hour podcast, giving us the edge that we needed to get over the finish line. So whether you're at the gym, on a bike ride, or just trying to get over that night before, Lifeline's Hydro OG has got your back. Each serving is stocked with all the healthy ingredients and vitamins you could ask for. There are a great range of flavours, and with each serving at only 18 calories, you really can't go wrong. Here at the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast, we like to support local, independent companies and brands, and Lifelines is a product that I am proud to endorse. Go to lifelines.com. Now that's LYFELINEZ.com to find out more. Now, without further ado, here is today's episode. Hi guys, and welcome to this fantastic episode featuring the one, the only Marcus Bean. I really enjoy chatting to Marcus away from the podcast, on the podcast. You know, there's things that we're talking about at the moment that I think are really, really exciting. And thank you so much as well. Of course, as always, to Verity. Fantastic, as always. A couple of events I want to tell you about before we go into this podcast. I want to tell you about Drawn. Drawn is something that I feel a close connection with, have done over the last few years. It's a coming together of some of the nicest artists from Shropshire and a bit further afield. They come together and they sell their wares. You'll see artists doing art, speaking to people. There's things the kids can do. And we've been a part of it for the last couple of years. We're going to be there. We're going to take some microphones and some cameras. We're going to set up a studio. And we will invite you to come along too. It's at the Flax Mill on the 29th to the 30th of April. It's a weekend session. You come and have a go. Come and have a look. You'll have Gary Drew there doing his thing. Gary Drew is responsible for the giant pink flamingo on the side of the Seven Social, amongst many other things. He's a fantastic artist and he'll be there doing his thing. It'd be great to see him again. So that's Drawn on the 29th and the 30th of April. You can find Drawn on Facebook. Literally just type in Drawn and you'll see the nice, beautiful, bright orange logo pop up there. Also, there is an evening with the Dirty Rockin Scoundrels. They are one of the best bands in the Midlands. And this is a charity event organised by Kate Vaughan to try and create donations towards her London Marathon attempts, raising money for Whiz Kids, a charity that helps disabled children gain access to walking frames and wheelchairs, and to give them that the mobility that might help them with a bit of independence. So that's an evening with the Dirty Rockin Scoundrels. That's on the 13th of May, and that is at Shrewsbury High School. And the tickets are only £10. Only £10. It's a cheap evening with one of the best bands in the Midlands with a cheap bar. It's going to be a fantastic evening, and we're going to be there doing a Q&A session too. It is going to be fantastic. You go to Eventbrite and just type in Dirty Rockin Scoundrels. It'll come up, but you can also find the link on the readout for this podcast too, and on our Facebook page. There's lots of places to find tickets. So anyway, let's get on with this amazing episode featuring Marcus Bean. Here we go. I was thinking, because I keep going on about these chaffles, and I think I may have mentioned chaffles to you. I don't know if I have. Chaffles? Chaffles. So, because I'm on the keto diet, we can't have bread.
Oh, right. I did wonder whether you were on like some random diet.
Yeah.
So no bread or no carbs.
It's not. The thing is, it's like it's a way of life for us now. We've been doing it for so long, and it's working as well. It's doing great things.
Well, it does. I mean, you just basically,
Yeah, you just got to be careful afterwards, because that's what happened. I was like, I lost loads of weight, and then I stopped it, and then turned into a pudding.
It's a hard old piece to do, but it's pretty straightforward. But did you cut out all carbs then?
we can have, I think it's between 20 and 30 grams of carbs a day. So you can have like a fig roll, or you can have like
potatoes.
Yeah, sweet potatoes are great because like you're not supposed to have root veg, but they're very low in carbs, so it's great.
Are you treating it like a lifestyle choice?
Yes, very much so. This is me now. So what we can have like a couple of cheat days a month because it tricks your metabolism into a bit and you actually end up losing weight, but you got to be very strict with it and not be like, oh, let's go for an all day buffet or something. Like you got to like be
12 cheat days in a row.
12 cheat days in a row. Like anything in life.
Cheese on toast.
Cheese on toast. All right, okay. So welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. I'm going to just turn my laptop. It's because I've got my laptop plugged in. Today we're sat with Marcus Bean and Verity's here too. All right. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
First of all, before we do this, apologies for Pod Aid, because Pod Aid was an absolute dumpster fire when you came in, right? When you
it was interesting, yeah.
it was very it was like I think you
had a
were
Wi-Fi.
coming in then. Were you just coming in as that was all going on?
My slot in Pod Aid was the first slot that didn't have internet troubles and connectivity issues. Is that what you had to contend with?
Yeah, I don't think there was a bit that we didn't have problems.
No, I think in fact I look back at the content because I stripped it all into little bits. Marcus's stuff, all of it was not unusual. Most of it's just sat on his phone, rightly so, because there was nothing going on. We were chatting amongst ourselves. It was just nuts. We were at Love to Stay, which are great, by the way, and they sorted out the issue once they saw how much I was flapping and how much it meant to us. They gave us the fastest internet I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing after that. So you were the bump in the road. So I'm very sorry about that.
That's all right, no worries.
It worked out well though. We raised quite a bit of money. I think. What did we raise? We raised like, was it £1,300? I think it was for Ling and Davis. So we did a great job. But yeah, apologies for that. But it was great to see you nonetheless. I don't think I even had much of a conversation with you because I was running up and down.
I think you were doing something over there. Yeah. Everybody else was doing something else. It was interesting. But it was fine. Sat down for half an hour.
Planning stuff. So the world of you, Marcus Bean, is an interesting one because we did an interview during lockdown, but virtually.
We did. Yeah.
I mean, I learned a lot about you in the fact that you're a self-taught chef, right? Which is
yes. So completely self-taught, and people don't really know what a self-taught chef is. Because you think of like if I go into a kitchen or I speak to someone, oh, where have you trained? You know, that's always the first question you get asked, and I'm like, well, I haven't trained. I've trained myself. Where you know, and it's very much sort of I'd say to a certain extent frowned upon. But then actually, if you look at a lot of people who are self-taught. In terms of the the dynamics of chefing, it's because essentially in the UK we get classed as if you're at a catering college, you get taught how to cook French, and that's how we are. So we're classically trained to cook French food.
Is there like a Cambridge of food colleges or universities? Is there somewhere where
I mean, there's lots. There's like Kingsway and in London, and there's a few others. But I mean, essentially, when you go to training, there's lots of different areas of where you can either do private, so you actually pay for it and fund it yourself. So a lot of chefs and sort of, I'd say sort of like culinary celebrities have gone through things like Leiths, which is a private education, so you pay for it yourself. There isn't a funding element to that. Or you can go to catering colleges, or you can have part-funded, self-funded. It really varies, but if I'm wondering, the difference in quality across those colleges is massive. So it is really down to a lot of personal drive, and the most people who are successful at cooking and make a career out of it, people who want to do it. College is a very small part of that, and then actually the majority of what they get is when they're on work experience. So it's then when they work, who they work with, and it's building up that experience. And that's why in the younger years most people will travel all over the world, but they'll also travel from venue to venue to get knowledge and data from everybody, because every chef's completely different. We're not all
Anthony Bourdain. We can't be like, I'm in Cuba, next day I'm in.
And now I think obviously with social media, people want to be that element of creating something where the ideal is, I'm going to go travel around the world and eat food and get a film for it and get paid. That doesn't happen. In the same way that it doesn't happen that most people are on TV and they're cooking and they get paid shed loads of money for it. It doesn't happen. You have to love food and you have to want to do really well at it. And then the secondary part of that. So, everybody you look at who is in the public eye in terms of catering and food, even celebrity status really in terms of presenters and other things, have been in the background for an awful long time. And they've been building up that element. And we were having a conversation earlier about you saying things, you start to find stuff comes along, and you could have been doing it for 10 years. When it doesn't work in the way that Pop Idol used to, where you suddenly appear, you get made into a band, and then overnight you're a success. That's not reality.
So what happened? What was your journey?
So mine was completely different. So like most people, like if you look at, let's say, Jamie Oliver, for example, Jamie Oliver, was his dad was a chef, grew up in a pub. He was always in the kitchen. He loved to cook, blah, blah, blah. It was all about the story. And, he was in the kitchen cooking. Well, I was the same sort of thing. I grew up in pubs from the age of 5, but my mum was a chef. My dad was front of house. But I was allowed in the kitchen, but I'd never go in the kitchen because it was always busy. It's a commercial kitchen. We didn't have our own kitchen upstairs like in the flat, so I couldn't even whip up a pot noodle if I wanted because I didn't even have a cow. Or cheese on toast. So
even today it's cheese on toast.
So I didn't have the option to do that. So, but on the plus side, from the age of 5 years old, growing up, I got given a menu every day of my life, and that was what I ate.
You got to eat just fine.
Yeah, like
cooking.
We had 7, 8 main courses,
Wow.
section of 4 or 5 starters, a dessert board. I had crisps behind the bar, chocolate. I had 4-litre tubs of ice cream in the freezer.
My childhood dream.
Exactly. I mean, in the teenage years, I had cigarettes behind the bar and all sorts of So generally, I grew up around great food, so I could choose whatever it was, and it literally was a case of mum and dad were always working. They never really had a day off, and it was like we're upstairs. It's like, what do you want for dinner? There's a menu, or we've got this on the special. Do you want that? And that's how it was. And I could have steak. Growing up, most of the time I probably did have steak.
No more T-bones for you, man. We got a budget.
Exactly. But back in the day, the budget wasn't as bad, because obviously the cost of prices of ingredients was lower. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be that. So I grew up around food and didn't need to cook, didn't want to cook. Didn't have any necessity to cook. The only time I ever sat down with my parents was between 3 and 6 on a Sunday afternoon. And generally, in my teenage years, I'd been out with my friends on a Saturday night. I'd phone up my mum and say, "Oh, you having lunch?" Yeah, having lunch. Oh, okay, what time? 3:30. And she'd be like, "How many of you is there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, about 10 of us." Okay, great. And that was the only time I sat.
I bet you were the most popular kid in school.
Well, yeah, but
you got cigarettes behind the bar.
Yeah, but again, I didn't, like I say, if you look at my childhood, I didn't really see. My parents were always there, but I wasn't. They were never there, if that makes sense. It's very interesting. So I sort of almost grew up and went, well, I don't really want to do that as a career, but I loved hospitality. I loved being around people. I love eating. Anyway, we did lots of different things. I went into music. I studied sound engineering in Manchester when I moved up to Shropshire when I was 17.
Well, before that, if I need any help with producing, you can help me with that.
Yeah, I'm a bit out of touch now because everything's changed on slightly. But yes, that was my thing. And then before I moved up to Shropshire, I was actually a pig farmer for about a year. And I had the option to either stay down in Henley on Thames in Oxfordshire, where we were originally in pubs, but my mum was moving back to Shropshire, and they bought a pub and just said, "Look, what do you want to do? Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Do I stay being a commercial pig farmer?" And I was like, literally, I used to ride my moped, 6 o'clock in the morning, get to a farm, get paid pittance for it, and it was one of them. So I came up to Shropshire when I was 17 and helped my parents develop the pub. I worked in them, then went to Manchester, did sound engineering, met my wife because she came to work for my dad. That's how we met. And then she worked front of house, but we both went off and did careers. So she went off and worked for Coffin Warehouse, became a really good manager, and then went to area manager level. I did the same, actually. Ended up sort of being a sales consultant, worked my way up, got to area manager level, and then an opportunity for a pub came up. Locally, while my parents were still running theirs, the Burton Inn, and we sort of said, like, "Oh, do we do it? Do we make that commitment?" Because my wife at the time was working for Costa Coffee, and she was a brand auditor, so she had an area from Scotland right the way down to like Cornwall. It was ridiculous because it just started. So I mean, I never really saw her; she never really saw me, and we thought, "Oh yeah, pub, stupid idea. We'll bring us together and be there like my mum and dad." But you work every day,
bring the
3 kids, yeah, and we did that. And the reason we had to employ a chef because we didn't cook. We knew what food was. We knew how to cook it, but we were, if you threw me in a kitchen and said cook a dinner for 10 people, I'm like, whoa, that's like, no, I can't do that. So we employed a chef, employed managers. We had everything. We set the business. We've developed it. It was called the New Inn at Bass Church in North Shropshire. We renovated for 7.5 weeks. Opened it. It was ridiculously busy. And we had more stuff happen in 12 months than my parents had in 35 years being in the business. And that was some full-on stuff happen. I mean, I probably shouldn't say on the podcast, but I had a guy who lived in the village who I employed his son. Something happened between the chef. The son went home, came back. I then was getting shouted upstairs because I had some friends just popped in, so I was doing a drink with some friends upstairs in the flat. I'm getting shouted at, Marcus, you need to come down, by one of the girls in the bar. Marcus, you need to come down now. You need to come in the kitchen. And I'm like, so I'm coming downstairs. I get down. She said, get in the kitchen now. And I go in the kitchen to find this guy, this bloke's dad, in my kitchen with my chef, my head chef, in a headlock, beating the out of him. During service, we had 50 people booked in the restaurant. The son's there.
Dinner on a show. I like it.
I've got my chefs trying to and my chefs around are there sort of like trying to plate up dishes because we had like a pass. So I get this, and this guy's like my dad. So I'm trying to managed to get this guy, manhandle him out, get him off the chef. Got him outside, and I'm like giving him a lecture. It's like giving my dad a lecture, going, "What are you doing? Your chef did this, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "It doesn't give you the right to walk into my business and start beating them up." But at that time, you see, when we first opened, there was just a back door, so you'd come in the car park, you could go straight in the kitchen. It was hot. We had the door open, so he did that. That was one scenario. I mean, I had numerous scenarios. We used to have people stealing stuff. We used to get like anonymous mail through the letterbox of people saying how we'd destroyed the pub. And I know that those people came some of our best customers, and they're all regulars. Wow. So there was a lot of stuff that happened. And after 12 months, including things that happened with the chef, and so he was a big part of that, we sat down and said, like, do we close the door and just go? Or do we continue to do this? And we sort of said, well, we want to continue. We want to at least give it another year or whatever. And one of the decisions we made was one of us had to go in the kitchen. And I said to Jenny, so, right, okay, who's going to go in? Do you want to do it? And she said no. And I said, right, I'll do it. And that was the decision made. And it was a really simple decision.
A do or die type.
Yeah, and we got rid of the chef, and I worked with a couple of like sous chefs we had. And I just literally just taught myself to cook. That was it. I mean, literally, I didn't close the pub or anything. It was like carried on, and I just started to teach myself. And had a local farm up the road, Moore Farm, which at the time didn't have a big shop and stuff, but they supplied meat. I read a lot of like culinary books, so like college books almost of knowing. So I was sort of almost teaching myself in that way. At the time, there was a lot of like trade magazines. I used to look a lot at like YouTubes and videos. It was before Instagram, so there was a lot of stuff.
Did you find yourself getting a bit of a passion for it rather than?
Yeah, I mean, but it was also quite hard because it was a necessity. So there was definitely a passion there, but that passion was building over time, and it got to a point where I really started to enjoy it. And I didn't really, if I'm honest, I didn't really know I was any good at it. Like I could just do it. And then at one point, I saw this thing called sort of Iron Chef advertised, and it was like I think I'd done something like 11 months without a day off, 7 days a week, and it was getting to the point where I was sort of burning myself out. So I saw this thing called Iron Chef. It was a random thing. I didn't really know what it was. It was some sort of like TV production they were going to do. I googled it, saw this American amazing like nuts show, and I went, oh, I'll apply for that. Anyway, never applied for it because I ran out of time. It was like 20 pages long, and they phoned me up like 2 weeks later, and I was doing service, and they just said, can you talk to us? And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm working. So and they said, look, we really like the sound of it. We've seen part of your application, but you haven't finished it. And I said, well, it's too late. It was too long. And they said, would you come and do a screen test? And I was like, yeah. And they were touring around the UK doing a screen test, and it was Aston Villa football ground. So I had to go there, cook a dish with loads of other professional chefs, some amateurs. And I rocked up, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the first time I've cooked out of the pub kitchen ever. Like I'd never done anything, not even at someone's house. Like that's it.
Bit overbearing for you.
Yeah, and I just did like a turbot dish with like French fries, like a mussel sauce, something really simple, like a posh fish and chips really. Did it, they liked me, they did an interview, a screen test, and then cut a long story short, they shortlisted me to go and do the filming in Glasgow for the show. I went up there. I remember sitting in a taxi with loads of other professional chefs because they balled us all together to save money from the taxi from the airport. And I phoned Jenny up when I got to the hotel, and I went, I think I'm well out of my depth. Like, there's pro chefs here. Some of these guys that work for like decent chefs. I mean, there's amateurs as well, but there is a lot of people. I said, I'm like that. And she just went, just do what you do. Just chill out. Like, don't, just enjoy being out of the kitchen almost, because it was a different scenario to being at home in the pub.
What when you see these cliche TV shows when somebody's doing like X Factor and they're on the queue and they're all going, Oh no, they're all trying to stand out and stuff. What does that look like in the chef world? Because I can
No one talks, no one does anything, no one communicates. It's horrible. But that's how the industry has always been. It's
Dog eat dog.
Yeah, it's very dog eat dog, and especially in that environment because they were all there to win. I mean, there's no money. Like, didn't win anything. Like, it wasn't like
No
it's not like now
trophy.
where you could get a prize money or win $100,000. I mean, it wasn't even that. It was just about
Getting
the
your name
person
out there.
being the winner. Yeah. So I just went out and did it, and we competed against each other, but we also competed against this Iron Chef. And there was Tom Aikens, there was a lady called Judy Jew, an incredible chef, and then we had a few others, and a guy called Martin Blues. Anyway, we filmed a couple of shows a day. I ended up winning most of my shows every day. And it collated that I'd won like 4 and used to get like stars and whatever. Anyway, I was then through into the final, and I had to go back to the pub, fly back home, work, fly back out to do the finals week. It was me and one other guy, and we became the only two winners of the whole show, because you didn't necessarily win because you got in the final because the Iron Chef could win. And I actually ended up beating a guy called Martin Blunos, who at the time had, well, at its height, he had 2 Michelin stars. And we had a whole hind of lamb, and there was like me cooking 2 starters and him cooking two starters, and we both cooked 2 mains as well. And I had 2 recruits from me helping me. One of them actually was a guy called Andy Parry from Shrewsbury, who worked with me at the time at the pub, local lad, really lovely guy. So he came up to Scotland, worked with me, and then I had another one they just supplied, and then Martin Blunos had 2 really good quality, like professional sous chefs as well. Yeah. And at the time there was everybody. Ollie Smith, you know Ollie Smith, the wine guy, does Saturday Kitchen. He was one of the judges. We had loads of people. Everybody was a food critic, so they were all like Guardian writers, Telegraph. So it wasn't a small bag. And I remember like doing halfway through, and I was pretty nervous, like, you know, because you've got a camera being stuff in your face, you've got pressure on, and it is timed. And Ollie just came up to me and like put his just sort of like leant on my shoulder, and he said, "You're winning on points, just keep going." And I went, "Oh, cheers, mate." And I just like carried on going, and I was and it got to a point where I just got to the end, and I was just like, "Oh, this is just awesome." And then it came to the end, and it was like, "Marcus, you won against like," the end of it was really quite sort of emotional, because I'd never done anything like that before. But then it was a complete anticlimax, because I got told at the end, you're gonna, like, you know, it's gonna be big, it's gonna be massive, this will be the next big thing. Anyway, the show wasn't as successful as they thought. It was the wrong timing anyway. So I came back and just carried on working the pub, and that's how I started doing chefing out of the pub. And then I just thought, well, I'll get an agent, I'll do a bit of this, I'll do some demos, and then I've ended up doing things like This Morning and stuff after that. So that's where it started. It was out of a necessity, and then it was only because I started cooking. And then at that point, I think when I won the show, I sort of realised that I was all right at cooking. Like, it was almost like for me to be able to.
Sounds so busy though. It sounds like it's just absolutely.
I mean, that was, yeah, I don't know how many years ago that was. That was like, well, I've been at school 10 years. So you're talking like, we filmed that probably like 17 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, you can probably still find footage of it if you Google like Iron Chef UK, and it's just a mental show. Like, I mean, you can the American version is and it still runs now. It's the biggest cookery show, I'd probably say, in the world, and in the States it is like, everybody who's on there is like royalty. It's just, but it's crazy. You have this like reveal of an ingredient, and there's smoke and fire and flame, and people running around like, you know, headless chicken. But it's mental. But it just didn't work on the format in the UK, and it was quite interesting. So I did that, and then done things like This Morning, and I've just sort of grown a passion for it. So I'm lucky enough now where I did demoing and then went to live, and now I get to host things like food shows. And because I'm doing things like BBC Good Food Show, and I've gone from sort of chefing and demonstrating for half an hour, then I got asked by the shows to actually, do you want to do a little bit of, you know, hosting? And I was like, oh, okay. And I realised that hosting I would get paid more for, because if you're chefing, you only get 1 demo. If I'm hosting, I've got 4 days, because I'll do everybody's demo. And then now I'm great, because obviously I remember even sitting at home, you know, it's obviously like the iconic thing of everybody has someone behind them supporting them, and obviously I've always had Jenny. But I remember when I used to do like a little stage at the BBC Good Food shows, it was Maggie Mix stage, open theatre, 150 people max, and I'd do a demo, and I'd get like the non sort of like really high end celebs. I'd get a lot, you know, the sort of lower end, and it was really nice, really lovely. And then one year, the guy who was a professional presenter, who used to do the Big Kitchen, which was 3,000 people every show, and that was your sort of hairy bikers and whatever else, and James Martin, and they just phoned me. The director of the show just sent me a text message and said, Andy can't make it in, would you cover him? And I sat, and I remember getting a text and going to Jenny. I was just sat at the kitchen table and going, they've just given me a text and they've asked me to host a big kitchen. She went, what do you mean? She said, well, how many people is that? And I said, well, 3,000 every show, 6 shows a day, 4 days.
Whoa.
And I went, I'll be like working with James and, you know, like everybody, Michelle Rue Jr., you know, all the sort of the big wigs. At that time, it was like Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry as well, because they were the Bake Off originals. Master Chef, John and Greg. And she just went, well, what are you messing about? Text back and say yes. And I was like, and that's what I did. So, and yeah, and then and I've carried on doing that ever since. So, but I've always been like a bit of a sponge with food. So whenever I'm somewhere, I'm always wanting to learn something. So when I did like a Glasgow food show, I'd phone up Tom Kitchen because he demoed in a day. And I'd say, Tom, can I come and work in the kitchen? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, he said, like, you just finished work, Marcus. I'm like, yeah, but can I come and work in the kitchen? So I'd get like a train from Glasgow to Edinburgh. I'd go up there, I'd go and work in the kitchen for like 3 hours, prepping langoustines, which is the most boring job, but you just prep them just because I want to watch what's going on. And then he'd right, Marcus, go and sit down. And then he'd obviously like feed me like a 7-course menu with drinks and stuff. And I'd just kip at his house overnight, and then we'd go and do the same thing again. And I did the same in London. I was working at Excel, or Olympia, I think it was time. And Ashley Palmer Watts was the exec chef of Dinner by Heston. So the Mandarin Oriental, beautiful, all a la carte, massive restaurant. And I phoned him up and just said, can I come and work? And he's like, yeah, of course, no worries. And that's how, that sort of things that I end up doing is just like putting myself in a situation and always learning, because I don't just learn about food. I want to learn about how they do stuff, how they train their staff, how they do this, how they do that. And that's sort of, yeah, that's what it is.
When you had your pub, how long had you been in your kitchen before you entered the Iron Chef?
I think about a maximum of 1.5 to 2 years.
Because that's a real quick progression.
Oh yeah, massively. But then I suppose to a certain extent, if you work solid for like 8-9 months,
without a day
I've
off,
sort of almost doubled that up. So I suppose if you put it into normal hours, you'd probably be looking at like 3 years as a normal career. And yeah. I mean, but that's just how we did it, and we were pre-kids, so I ended up doing. I mean, I would say probably like when me and Jenny were pre-kids, you know, we'd get up at like 6-7 in the morning. We'd be cleaning. We'd work. We'd close between 3 and 6. We'd then work. We then wouldn't close till probably 12-1. By the time we cashed out, we're upstairs 1:30, 2 in the morning, and that's like 7 days a week. And that was the norm.
There's no life, is it? Really?
Yeah, we would sit on the sofa and should we have a bath? Yeah, go some bath, and then like that's it, glass of wine, bed, and then done. But you know that, and it does become your life. But and I still love it now. I mean, I'm helping a friend out, you know, in a pub now. And he reminds me a little bit of like what I was like in the kitchen, because you try and do everything, you know, and you're trying to cook in a kitchen and give all your all, and then suddenly someone tells you the door's broken on the bar or something, or the fridge isn't working, or the washing machine's broken, or a customer's complaining, or you know the phone doesn't, you know, whatever it is. So you're doing everything, and it made me, just the last couple of weeks doing this thing, it made me realise what I was like. And I think just over that progression over time, that's why now I love going in and doing consultancy, because I can go in and see from the other side of how it is. And I mean, generally as a rule of thumb, like I get on with loads of chefs, but chefs have notoriously been quite secretive in their recipes, their setup. You know, it's very much about them. You know,
a lot of ego.
Yeah, there is a lot of egos, and it's a shame, really. And I think it's getting better. There still is a lot of that in the industry. And it's a shame, like people used to come to me, and I've always been very open. So if someone said to me, like, can you know, how do you do that? Or what's that recipe? I'd always talk to them about it. I'd always tell them. I know in reality that they can't cook it the same way I have, because I've got 10 years of experience. So I can give someone a recipe. It doesn't mean they can cook it how I cook it. Yeah. It's about skill set. And that's why it naturally progressed into teaching, because I've always wanted to show people.
Do you feel like there's a bit more of an openness to how things are done these days? I mean, in general, because like, okay, so one of my favorite podcasts are like Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, and their podcast, Two Bears, One Cave, and they talk a lot about the comedy circuit and kind of what goes into becoming a comedian.
Yeah.
And because they're talking about it, other people are talking about it, and there seems to be like this openness to something that was quite, like, I think standing up on stage to do stand-up comedy is killer, right?
I mean, I mean, to be fair, I stand on stage a few times in front of a lot of people, and there's a lot of pressure, but then being the focus purely on you, that's even, I mean, you know, I can sort of throw it onto other bits, and I've only got a short window where it's me, and then I'm like onto someone else.
Yeah.
But I mean, that to me probably, I wouldn't say it terrifies me, because that's the wrong thing. So, I mean, I think anything you do, you have to put your all into it. And I think you've got to have self-confidence in so I think it's less knowing about your ability, but knowing that you can always deliver something.
Yeah, of course.
And actually, if you're naturally yourself, that will shine through in whatever you do. And that doesn't always, like as a comedian, you've got to have a natural ability to be funny. But in reality, I've got a lot of friends. I've got a really good friend who is naturally funny. He's a guy called Stuart Holdham. He's a warm-up guy on all the best TV shows you ever see. So all your Top Gears, your Dancing on Ice, all the others, like everything you see, most of the things on TV, he is a warm-up guy. Now, if you imagine they're filming for like 5 hours, he has to entertain a crowd of people for 5 hours. Sometimes there's gaps. Sometimes they stop. Sometimes they start. Sometimes, but he's naturally funny. Like I can go out for a drink with him and he makes me laugh. But I say to him, like, how do you get that natural wit? And he says a lot of it is research. Like it has to be current. So he has to go home and he has to sit and he has to make sure he's constantly knowing what's in the news. What's the next big thing? Who is the local celebrity or what that celebrity is doing? So then you can reference it into the crowd. So you sort of think that people are naturally funny, and the reality is they're not. They are naturally talented,
but they've got to have the content.
Exactly, they've got and then so really, it's a bit like anything. I think if I put my mind to it, I think I could probably be a comedian. I don't know whether I'd be the greatest one, but I could probably pull it off. Do you know what I mean?
The point I was trying to make there, I wasn't going, do you know what, Marcus, the cooking's great, but I think you should definitely move.
No.
What I mean is
podcasting
is like is something that where people are now opening up about their lives. And is this something with food that is there something happening with food with that at the moment that maybe chefs are talking about this industry?
Well, I think so, yeah. And I think we've covered something, and hopefully we're going to do a few bits on sort of hospitality and elements around it, because I think for me as an industry, obviously I haven't worked in the bottom end of a professional kitchen for years and years. That's not been what I've done. I've been quite lucky in the way that I've been self-taught. I had my own business and I was allowed myself to
dance
sort of
to your own tune.
But I mean, and I put the hours in, I put the graft in, there's no doubt, but I wasn't under someone who I felt pressured that I had to work to a standard, which I think a lot of people have, and they feel they needed that within their ability. And sometimes it's seen as that you've got to have that on your CV, which is pretty horrendous, but that's the reality. They get judged by being under there. And I think for me, when you're trying to create something like that where you've got that sort of hard graft element, I think whatever you put your mind to is really important. Now, hospitality is quite a hard one because there is still a lot of, I don't want to say problems in the industry, that's a bad thing, but I would say actually at the moment I think it's probably in its worst position in terms of staffing that it's ever been. I've spoken to loads of business owners and companies and they say recruitment is the worst it has ever been. I mean, I could list probably 10 people now that I know, even locally, that are looking for people to work. And if they don't have those people, they can't run their business because they don't cook. So it's not like you can throw your hand to it and do it. That I was lucky that I managed to do that, but not many people can. So I think now we're in an industry where a lot of people are left because it's hard. The hours are ridiculous. It affects your social life. It affects your mental health. A lot of people go to the hard stuff, and because the hours are intense and the pressure can be too much, and before you know it, they've hit drugs and alcohol, or it's affected their relationship. So it is becoming something that a lot of people have got to talk much more about, and I'd like to see it more as an open book. But unfortunately, the reality of the industry is it's still hard. I mean, you're still knocking out 14, 15, 16-hour days.
Because I know they've cut down on like the hazing in the kitchen and stuff a little bit, haven't they? They kind of modernised how chefs are brought up, because I know the old school method is like the Gordon Ramsay, like.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I can tell you a lot of stories from people who I know have worked. I mean, they used to burn them and beat them, and I mean, it was pretty
really
horrible. I mean, and that's whether you were female, male. It was almost like this sort of like playground behaviour of who was the boss, and you will respect the person that is your boss.
An alpha.
Yeah, and that's it was a pecking order essentially. And of course the problem was then that it became, that's what my boss did to me, so that's what I do. If I'm into that position, that's what I got to do. And it's getting to a point now where obviously you just can't run business. It's just not physically possible. And there's still a lot of people who run it like that because that's how they don't know any difference. So there's an element of going, well, hold on, that's just crazy. And it could not even be something like the abuse element, which I've just mentioned, but it can be the sort of the mental element of it, of someone having a day off for a bereavement, and then someone, like a manager or someone bringing it up in a staff meeting and saying, oh yeah, and they were off because such and such. I mean, like that's happened a lot, and it's like you're making someone feel guilty because someone in their family died, but yet you've brought that up it's just, so there is so many things that I still think need to change, but there is some incredible kitchens, there is some incredible work environments now. I just think we're in a situation where everybody's under pressure now because it's really hard to make it balanced because there just isn't the bodies. So, you can make the best work environment in the world, but if you're still having to put all those time and hours in, how do you balance that? And then if the balance is that we will give the people less hours, but then the less hours might mean that the business doesn't work, well, then you haven't got a business. So it's a real funny old situation, but I hope it does improve. But I mean, I can't see it improving in the next couple of years, if I'm honest.
I mean, like, you talking about your friend going, your colleague going, your head on points, let's do this. You can do it. That encouragement, I'm sure
Massively.
that gets better results than, what are you doing that for? Why isn't that right?
100%. But then naturally, as everything, it's a bit like if I said to you, and I'm sure everybody at some point has had a bit of car rage. We all get in a car.
I do all the time.
We drive. Exactly. You drive, you get behind a wheel, and there is something in you or something, and it can be anything that anybody does. And I don't know anybody I've ever got into a car that hasn't at some point put an expletive in there, put a finger up, whatever it is, or shouted to themselves in some form of reaction to something else that someone did. And it's an impulse moment. It's like we're behind that wheel and something has happened. And that happens. And the problem is that happens a lot in the kitchen because naturally you're in an environment which is so high pressured, and you're the sole person responsible for all those other people. You could have 50, 100, 150 people. You could have someone's wedding. I mean, that's a big responsibility. And to have that on your head as a single person, a head chef, an exec chef, a senior sous chef, whatever it is pretty horrendous. Because if you actually break it down and think about it, that's like, if you just suddenly stop now, what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to them? And the reality is actually, well, they'll just go home. They'll be annoyed. They'll be upset. Obviously, they'll have to do it again. They'll have to rebook it. They'll be really, really frustrated. But the reality is, it's not the end of the world. But of course, for everybody else, it sort of is at that moment. I mean, there's some quite clever stuff. I've read a lot of sort of books and on a lot of people that are right at the high end, and and it does sometimes it does get to people where the pressure is just so much, and they just go like, I've just got to walk out and sit, and I can't take this anymore. And that's how a lot of people leave the industry, because it is such high intensity. I mean, they compare it to sort of similar hours that like new doctors and young doctors work when they're in training. That's hospitality really for you, and it's like that. I know it doesn't sound, obviously it's much more extreme if you're looking after someone's life, but the life is responsible of you.
I work at the hospital, and I was just thinking, I've had this conversation in the office where the higher you move up, you've got obvious perks, but the hours you put in, the unsociable, the responsibility, it's everything goes heightened.
And also the recognition becomes a part of that as well. Yeah. So if you look at the Michelin Guide, for example, a Michelin Guide is a recognition of essentially of culinary skills, I suppose, really, in essence. It's the quality of food that you can deliver, and it's recognised by an iconic thing, but it's also massively recognised by chefs.
Does that go on like ratings on like Yelp and things like that?
No. So it's an individual assessment, but it is worldwide, and it is only done, and you do not know the criteria. We just know roughly what the criteria is. You don't know whether you're going to get it. You can do it, but it does help if you've been with other chefs sometimes, because the delivery of how you can create something. But essentially, it's a recognition. So a lot of chefs will strive for a Michelin star, and the ultimate, in the culinary world, the ultimate, amount is that you can get is 3 stars. Now, 3 stars is an exceptionally high level. There is not many 3 stars in the world. Okay, in the UK, I think there's 6. I might be wrong. They've just released them recently, but 3 stars is only about sort of 6 or maybe 10, and that's it in the UK alone. And then you've got 2 star, which is exceptionally high level, and then you've got 1 star, which again is an exceptionally high level. Now, when you get to that high level of recognition, and I know chefs that had Michelin stars, which is a massive element of respect within the industry, your peers, with the general public, with booking, with customers. Imagine having that Michelin star taken off you, and that can happen for any reason. You don't know what.
Wasn't there a chef that
Will Holland.
Committed
Will Holland did commit. So Will Holland lost his star when he was at Ludlow, which was a big effect. I mean, you can imagine having that recognition. Notoriously, there was a 2-star chef in. So basically, they assess you every year.
I don't know how do you get?
You don't. They come anonymously. They might sometimes tell you. They might actually give you some feedback, but they wouldn't tell you in any way, shape, or form whether you've got a star. You have to wait until it's announced. But you can have a star and you can lose a star. Now, I think over the years it's changed, but essentially, you can have 2 stars to 1 star. You could have 1 star to no star. So you can imagine that, like having that iconic recognition and then losing it as a chef, you would think your career is over. And actually, the reality is it's not. And it might have just been as simple as someone had a bad day. Whoever was delivering it wasn't quite to their standard, and also it's personal taste to a certain extent because it's what you think. But there has been over the years. I mean, a French chef, I think he was 2-star level, went into the kitchen and took his own life. I mean, the pressure is intense.
Yeah.
But they're making things better, and I think it gets this level. So you've got lots of things that sort of create this pressure and recognition, so you're striving for that element, but then so it's a real hard mix to get into. But I just think now, I mean, maybe the sort of celebrity chef element is another route that people can go down. The downside is people just think you can go and knock up something on telly and make loads of money.
What does something like TikTok and Instagram have on the effect of TV chefs?
I don't know how it hasn't had an effect on TV chefs, but I mean it's massive in terms of recognition and as a career. I mean, a good example of that is Poppy Cooks. She was working pre-lockdown in a sort of, I don't know if it was Michelin starred or she had worked in Michelin starred restaurants. Lovely girl, only young, and got made redundant. Went home, what do I do? Because the restaurant had closed, a lot of people laid a lot of staff off. I think she just thought, do you know what, I'll start doing some little videos. So she, at the time, I think she went on TikTok when it was still fairly early days. And think, I love potatoes, so I'm going to start doing potatoes, and realised that potato was a good thing. And she basically just kept going and posting very regularly, very consistently. And I think now she's classed as the queen of potato, like most people know her as the queen of potatoes. She's just recently got a judging role as judge on Junior MasterChef with the BBC. She's also got a lot of other roles she's done. She's been used for lots of different stuff. So, I mean, she has made a career that probably on TikTok over a couple of years, she probably would have pushed herself maybe 10 years if she'd have been in the kitchen. And she might never got to that point. So it's massive in terms of its drive and success and how it can put people at the forefront. But then again, she'll get criticism. She'll get criticism from chefs because chefs will say, well, she's not a chef. You don't do that. But the reality, it doesn't make any difference. Like for me, it's like if someone's putting the graft in, it doesn't make any difference. They don't have to be trained. They don't have to do this. They don't have to do that. It's just disrespectful. But I think there's just negativity, and you'll find that anywhere, especially with chefs, because there's probably a lot of chefs out there that have probably worked their arse off for 15 hours a day for 15 years, and they're probably just still ticking over. They probably earn a good wage, but they probably just want, actually, I want to maybe do slightly less hours, earn a really good salary, and actually be able to just chill out a little bit. And they probably see someone like Poppy, who is, still working exceptionally hard, but for their eyes, it's not working hard. And, and they just want to be negative about it. And that's such a shame, because for me, social media is fantastic because of that. And I haven't got massive amounts of followers on. I'd love more, because obviously it brings in more money, and I might get some jobs off it. But the reality is, it's a great way of getting people involved in food. And if it brings more people in the industry, hopefully then that'll help with our staffing issues. It might even help the level of balance in there, but I mean, it's an interesting one, but I think social media is fantastic. You do have to embrace it. I was saying to this person I'm working with recently, who's got a local pub, it's like, you can't be in anywhere now and not have social media. You can't run a business without social media.
It's absolutely.
It's like sitting in a dark room and just going, well, I'm just going to stay here and wait for something to happen. It's not going to happen.
No,
like, no one's going to come through the door. You have to stand outside the door and you have to put a sign out, and then you have to like knock on the doors of people and start going around. Here's a little bit of this. Have you tried our bread? Have you tried that? You know, like, you know, you go, if you're in town, you wander around town, give people samples, talk about it, go and interact with people, do partnerships if you can't do that. And that's what social media is. You know, I had a great one. Well, I probably shouldn't be telling, but off the back of Instagram, I was messaging a few people, and some people follow me, some people don't, and randomly I messaged, do you know, like Kelvin's Farm? Kelvin and Liz Fletcher, they did like a big series, and it was like during the back end of lockdown. He's an actor, he was in Emmerdale, and he was actually a farmer in Emmerdale, and he's come out of Emmerdale now, and his wife's an actress as well, and they've got kids, and they decided to buy a farm. So they've actually bought a farm and become real farmers. Like, brilliant. Yeah, exactly. And they did a whole show on it. It was brilliant, and it was a massive success.
Oh, I know him. Yeah. I've forgotten his name. I don't watch soaps, but
yeah. So they became a massive success. Anyway, this show became a massive success. I was randomly, but he posted something, and neither of them can cook. He told me this. I'm not just saying that. He'd put a post of like some chicken that was absolutely like burnt to a crisp, and it come out of the Arga, and I just messaged him back. He didn't follow me. I messaged him back, and I said, "Oh, that looks tasty," or something like that. Has that come out of the Arga? And he messaged back, and we had this thing about, "Oh yeah, it's an Arga." He said, "I don't know how to use it." Liz doesn't have a clue either, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then I just said something like, "Look, if you ever need anybody to cook, I'd love to have you at school, or I'll come up and do something." And then within minutes, it followed me back. He was like, "Oh God, your school's amazing. Oh my God, I'll just check your videos out on like Reels. The Reels are amazing." Within a week, he'd phoned me up. We'd had a conversation. I went up to see him a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully I'm going to do some bits with him. Might tie into a new show, but who knows, you know. So he's just like, "We love what you do." And if I hadn't have done that message on social, I wouldn't have done it. And hopefully that'll carry on. I mean, we'll have to work on it, but it will carry on developing. And I've done that with so many people, you know, so you've got to be active.
Sometimes it's just about starting the conversation. I mean, like I was speaking to one of the biggest, I won't mention his name because it's just a bit crass, but like one of the biggest podcast producers on the planet. His laugh is notorious within.
Tell us, come on, you got
it's Nadav who does the producing for your mother's house, which is Tom Segura's podcast.
Okay, yeah.
And he sits in the producer booth. So that job where he's producing podcasts as they're being made is what I would love to do.
That's like your dream job.
That is my dream job, and. I reached out to him, so I got this project coming up. Can you give me some advice on how we can put this together? And he was just chatting to me. All night we were chatting to him. I was like, what's going on here? I'm chatting to Nadav, you know. And sometimes it is just about reaching out.
I think that's the thing, and I think that's where people forget about it. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, because the reality is you can message loads of people, and actually the majority of them won't come back to you. They don't even see it, because sometimes they have, you know, like Kelvin, I'm quite happy to say to him, and he's got like 250 odd thousand followers. So if I send him a message sometimes on Insta, he won't always see it.
Of course,
But the reality is, you know, if they do, most people are like you and me. I would like to think most people are like you and me, where they go, of course I will. Reach out. If someone phones me up and says, "Look, can I come and help, or can you give me some advice? Can I do that?" 100%. You know, and I think that's so important in today's, you know, in our world, where if you're not willing to help someone or give someone advice, then what's the point in being it? Do you know what I mean? It's so, and hospitality is massively like that. And I think that's why I love social media. And to be fair, Twitter was like that before Instagram, you know, and maybe Facebook in a certain way before that. But I think it's more visible now. And I think maybe not the real high end, but there is so many people that are really high level celebrity people or very high end producers, whatever, that are active. They are the people who are behind it. They might still have a team doing it, but actually every now and again they do check DMs, they check messages, they see comments. You know, they might get rid of some of them, but you know, it's really interesting how you can connect with someone. And there's no other way. Like, you go back 10 years, how would you have connected with anybody like that? You wouldn't.
Amazing, especially for food. Someone's so visual. I mean, like, big shout out to Tat FB. Do you know Tat FB? She's the kid cartoonist on TikTok. I think she's probably one of Shrewsbury's biggest TikTok stars now.
Oh, you'll have to like send me.
I will do. Well, she does the cartoons for my Shrewsbury. She's very, very successful cartoonist, and she's been on my show. She's a good friend, and she's got I'm looking now, 250,000 followers.
Wow.
4.9 million likes.
That's good. I need to work my heart.
But she is so naturally brilliant.
Yeah.
Just like. with tips and ways you can do things, ways you can line bowls with cling. Like, she's just so brilliant.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show, if the passion's there and if you want it and you try hard enough, it will come.
Yeah. I mean, I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and I was just talking about social, and I'm not like a social guru, but I get the format, and I mean, I'm guilty of sort of, you know, I can tell people how to do things, and that doesn't mean I necessarily do it myself, but I know.
Oh, you've got some skills, man.
Yeah, but there's an element of going like, you know, I know if I had the time, and I don't because I've got lots of other stuff going on, kids, family, and work commitments, but I said to these guys I was chatting to yesterday, I was like, look, the reality is, if I said to you now, right, you go on and you post something on your TikTok or on your Instagram every single day for a year, you will have a massive following or something, or you'll have work out of it. And what do you mean? And I went, the reality is the content helps, and that obviously does help a lot. But the reality is, if you're consistent in doing something, it's not all about the content as well. So it's a balance of both those things. And
it's a human element as well.
Well, also consistency is key. Yeah. So I've worked out in the social market, you know, and I'm bad because I'll do a week of consistency and then I'm not consistent because I'm busy doing something else. But I know as a fact, if I'm consistent, and I can see the difference even just with the amount of people you get, the connections you get, how the reach is, and we're in a great era where things can adapt and change, and that's what I love about social to a certain extent. It is very time consuming, and I think the only thing on social elements, it does worry me with like kids, like my kids, I'm like super worried about like how they get into it and how what it's showing them and all this stuff and how it affects their brain, because it's very different, and they're always like, yeah, but you're on your social, and I'm like, yeah, but it's different because I'm working, but they can't see that. So there is elements of it that worry me, but then there's also very clever ways of working it, and I think it's so good to see people doing fantastic stuff and having that straight connection, which you just never would have.
We're speaking to an influencer next week, Rianne. She travels the world, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to, because I've never spoken to someone like that before. Because you see those things on Instagram, you go, that's not real. Yeah, that's photoshopped. What are you doing? But like, she's got some genuinely amazing stories. So I'm really looking forward to it. And Instagram's a good one because it shows you your reach right at the top there.
Yeah,
and it comes up and down. And I remember I posted a video. I'm pretty sure it was the magic video that we did from Quartz Crush.
Yeah,
and that got tens of thousands of views, and that shot everything up, bam, for like, and I was like, but then it dropped again.
Yeah, and there isn't really a rhyme or reason as to how things happen. I mean, I've got videos on my TikTok that have done like 650,000, and you're like, it's just like a blooming potato bake with cheese and stuff, and it doesn't make sense. So I think there's loads of weird and wonderful ways of how it works. But I mean, I think you just got to be consistent, and I think sometimes it pops up, and some people, and it's all to do with interactions and stuff. But it is, I mean, I just think it's a great thing. But sometimes it can. My only downside is it can be like all consuming, and you feel like you're trying to do everything, and that can then affect, you know, like. You've got to balance it. There's got to be some sort of like cut off, like, right, I'm not going to do my phone, or I'm not going to do my social at this time. And it's a bit like running a business. You can be answering emails every minute of the day, and actually the reality is you shouldn't, because you're just going to burn yourself out. So, but such a great era for that.
When you're saying you're consistent for a week and then you're not, that's you balancing your life.
Trying, but then also I think sometimes to an element of, you know I could be more consistent because I could plan it in advance. So if I was more organised, then I could do it, and I could do, you know, loads and loads of stuff. There's a really good lady I work with called Jane. Can't remember her second surname, but she's known as Jane's Patisserie. So she started doing the BBC Good Food shows last year, and I met her and really, really like her. She's just incredible. And basically, she started a podcast years ago, became really successful with her podcast. It's a baking podcast. And then what's happened is she basically produced a book. The book came out and it became the best ever selling baking book, and it still is now. It sold more.
Take that, Paul Hollywood. I'm joking.
It sold more in 2 days than anybody has. Mary Berry, Nigella, so something like 44,000 copies in 2 days.
That's
or something
amazing.
stupid like that. And she's incredible. And we were talking about her because her content is consistent all the time. And I'm like, so how do you get, like, you know, because I'm always intrigued by these people, like, how do you do it? And she said, well, I've got a studio. I bought a little studio. It's her and her good friend, like a best friend, and they film content every day. That's their job. And I'm like, oh, right, so that. And she said, yeah, that's my job. And I get that because, she doesn't have kids.
I had someone today.
And I probably would do it if I was in a situation now where I'd probably do that. But you film that content every day, and then, of course, you've got something all the time. So it's just, that is the job. Whereas I sometimes think of the social as a side job, whereas actually it should be part of the job.
Well, people do it for a living, don't they? And, when it comes to the biscuit, I feel like there's so much potential with something like the Shrewsbury Biscuit to not just do audio stuff, but to actually, if I wanted to do this as a job, if I didn't have to pay the bills and I could just be like, all right, I'm going to get the door and do this for a living, you carry on, Verity.
Do you want me to get the door?
If you don't mind.
I'll get the door.
Lift the receiver and press the blue button. It's just okay. We've got another guest coming on in a second. It's a bit hectic here today, but it's so.
You need a studio. There you go.
This is what I'm trying to say. If somebody said, "Oh, you should do this for a living," and then I think the rewards would pay off, but it's just taking that leap of faith. It's just not that easy.
So what we need to do is find a nice Shropshire venue that is happy to give you a space free of charge in return for the odd little podcast to create the
bit of promotion. Hi, this is the Shrewsbury Biscuit.
The Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast at an incredible venue in town.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do that in some like really cool pub where we've got like a back room and it becomes the podcast of hospitality.
That would be amazing.
Business, all sorts.
Yeah. Right. What we did today is I like to throw out questions to people because and something that's relatable to you, of course, and of course it fits in with your development as a chef, is to talk about those home comfort foods where
nice.
The simple dishes. I think, what did I write? What is the simple meal that you believe you're the best at making? Ask this on Facebook. And for example, I do believe, and Marcus is in the room with me, that I make the best cheese on toast in the world. I will challenge anyone at this, including the famous Marcus Bean. We have to have a cheese on toast.
Well, you can't just say that. You've got to tell me how you make it first. Surely you can't just say I'll make the best cheese on toast in the world.
But a magician never reveals his tricks.
Now you're just being like a typical
I think
chef.
it's just a case of, so obviously you eat bread, you toast it one side, you take it out, you put some butter,
right,
and some cheese.
Okay. You only toast it one side?
One side, and then you chuck it in, and then you cook the cheese on top, and then you put some mustard sauce on before the cheese is set.
Okay.
As a professional, what are you saying?
And okay, we're going to have to do this, aren't we, sometime?
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to come to Brompton.
What bread?
Again, Warburton's.
A white bread. That's what you should have said. Yeah, a classic white bread.
Okay, so this is what people have responded, and we've got pictures as well. But obviously, I can't flip the laptop around. But Liam Tinsley said scrambled egg and smoked salmon, toad in the hole, and chicken mayo cucumber pasta. That sounds quite good, actually.
Chicken mayo cucumber. That's an interesting combination. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My wife says chili con carne. She does make an amazing chili.
Chili's con carne, great dish,
home food. Kay Gunner says lavender and lemon cake.
Lavender and lemon cake, that's nice.
And she sells that at Lavender Hampers and Gifts. So great plug there. We'll give you that. Cake. Sue Ainsworth says omelette with mushrooms, cheese, and peppers.
Classic omelette is always a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Kay sent some pictures of her cake, and it does actually look great, really cool. Okay, so Kate Bruno is the mother of Tom Bruno, who's in Vermont, my co-host for the Al and Tom of it all. Make sure you check that podcast out. And she says, asked my son how he feels about my sauerbraten.
Yep.
What's sauerbraten?
No idea.
Well, okay.
No idea.
Sausage casserole by Mark Fielden. Jenny Pierce says beans on toast, but add a little Worcester sauce to the beans
and cheese. Toast. Surely cheesy beans on toast.
The toast has to be buttered with salted butter. Yeah, Americans as well. You say to them beans on toast, and they're like, just beans on bread. Little minds. My brother Connor says pasta, bake, or risotto. Ryan Berger said breaded pork chops. They look pretty cool. They do, Ryan.
Nice.
Lucy Orchard. She said what I can do to Ainsley Harriet's couscous is worthy of a Michelin star. She's a stand-up comedian, so I mean that's probably a joke thrown in there as well. Sarah Belcher says, as a Yorkshire lass, I think I do great Yorkshire puddings. Yorkshire puddings are an interesting one, aren't they? Because you can have them sweet.
I once did Yorkshire puddings on TikTok, and the amount of comments I got. I mean, got some good likes because, of course, get us interactions. But I mean, people are just so like obsessed. It's just like, you're not from Yorkshire. That's not a Yorkshire. But for goodness' sake, it's just a recipe, and it's my take. And I always now put my take on the recipe. But there is a lot of people on TikTok that have a little obsession with things from certain regions. Yeah,
that's
an interesting one. That
a social media star who's absolutely blowing up right now. Her Her name's Yorkshire Peach, and she's from Texas, I think. Right. She's living in Yorkshire, and she's like going through her journey of translating things from American to British, living there, and she's like, loads of people sent in Yorkshire pudding recipes for her to try, and they sent in sweet versions of Yorkshire puddings, and doing things with sweet stuff. Get a Freddo and cook it in the middle of a Yorkshire pudding, and she was like, I was like, what is this?
That's just wrong.
Birgitta Saltman, by the way,
sounds amazing.
she said it was great. Birgitta Zoutman, an amazing photographer. She's a great friend of ours. She says Dutch pancakes called pofettes.
My brother makes these, and I can never remember what they're called. I call them profiteroles, which is not what they're called at all, but they're so tasty.
Served with real butter and ice and sugar. They look amazing, to be fair. Okay.
They're really nice.
And Kelsver Alexander, he says chicken tortellini soup.
Nice.
What's your go-to though? Just like something simple that people will be like, oh yeah, whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, I do like classic, like a mac and cheese, like a really good mac and cheese. Simple, because you just make like butter, milk, loads of different cheeses, cook your macaroni, bang it in, throw it in an oven. It's dead easy. But like, there's a difference between like what chefs eat. Most chefs eat pot noodles probably in McDonald's, to be fair, because they're too tired to cook for themselves.
Oh, that's so depressing.
Well, it's true though. That's the reality. Yeah, they'll like, even like Michelin stuff, like chefs will come back and they'll be eating like takeouts and simple stuff because they just don't want to cook. I mean, I used to love like just like a peanut butter and strawberry jam sandwich. Simple, loads of butter. You always got to have butter with peanut butter. Simple things like that, and like cheesy beans. I mean, cheesy beans, Heinz beans, cheese on top, melted, bit of Worcester sauce, done.
I think Jenny Pierce will agree with you there. She was all up in the comments here. So
yeah, I mean that's sort of I think simple, easy food that is like quick. I mean the other thing is like which are sort of like noodle dishes, stir fries are quite quick and simple. Yeah, so like chicken and soy noodles, like just dead easy. But actually a lot of the like ramen packs you can get from really good we use Setanaka in Shrewsbury in the parade, and they just do like these, they're like a really decent pot noodle but with good flavours, and you just buy the little pack and it's got all the flavourings in it, and you just put hot water on it and you just got some really good noodle dishes, like super easy.
So hungry right now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's more like dinner time, isn't it?
Do you have a simple dish that you feel like you cook really well?
No.
No?
No.
Ain't not much of a foodie?
I did cook. I haven't cooked properly in ages, so I can't even remember what I like to eat.
This is how we should have done the podcast today, is just to talk about the food that we're good at cooking. Well, Marcus, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For coming today. I know you're working on quite a bit at the moment.
Yeah.
You've got to support the Biscuit wherever you are. Are you going to be at any shows locally this year?
Yes. BBC Good Food Show in Birmingham summer, which you're going to be coming to, actually.
Yes.
We're going to do an interview with myself and Chris Bavin, as we're going to start something up there. So that's, so we've got BBC Good Food Show joined with BBC Gardeners World. So I'll be hosting the big kitchen in that section, which is great because we've got all the gardens outside. And then so you have like Alan Titchmarsh and Adam Frost and Monty Don and all that lot. And then you've also got all the chefs. So you've got like James Martin, Nadia, Harry Bikers, Ainsley, all that.
Do you ever get starstruck? Like this late into your career, do you ever see people and go, oh my God?
No, I mean, I had that Davina. Like Davina was like the one person that I always like adored on like Big Brother.
That's such a crush on her. Big
well, but also it's just her energy. Like she's just, and that was the one person I met many years ago when we did a health food show, and she came and I was like, oh, it's amazing, and I actually met her, and from the end of it I was like, oh, this is great. And a lot of people you meet, it's like, oh yeah, here's my number, here's my card, whatever, blah blah blah, and you expect and most people would never get you in contact, and she is literally, as soon as we'd finished, I gave her a card. She was in a car on her way home, and she like texted me straight away and said, really enjoyed today, it's great, you're great at what you do, I love what you did, really enjoyed it, let's keep in contact, and like tagged me on Facebook, tagged me on it, did all this sort of stuff, and I was just like, wow, so genuine. And she's always been that person that if I picked up the phone and just ring her, she's just that person, and the same way she'll speak to me. So we don't see each other all the time, but when we do, it's like we're just like old friends catching up. So I've known her for quite a long time, and she is exactly as you imagine her to be. And there's not many people you meet in your lifetime that are like that. So yeah, so she's really good. And then I mean, like, I wouldn't say starstruck. I'll actually tell you what, I did meet Samuel L. Jackson once.
Really?
Yeah, well, I was doing a dinner with Michael Caine, the chef, who's sort of a good friend of mine, and we're actually doing a food show. And on the Sunday, we finished the food show, and I'd done like 4 days of show, so I was knackered. And he went, "Oh yeah, I'm going down to Natural History Museum. We're doing the One for the Boys, which was a cancer charity. I think it still's run now." And he was one of the patrons, and also Samuel L. Jackson was. And it was a massive thing. So you had like Bear Grylls, all these sort of like models, sort of top icons, and Sam was there. And obviously I was on. Michael said, "I want you to just come down and do a bit of cooking." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got a train down, met Michael. I was actually on a table randomly with like what's the guy, David Williams. There was a few others. There was loads of people there, and I was just like sat on there. But I was actually helping Michael do the plating up. And I introduced Samuel L. Jackson. So I had a selfie with like Samuel. I was like, I had a quick chat with him. He's like, "Oh, you're my Michael's mate." Yeah. I was like, that was pretty cool.
Wow.
Because I watch all the films.
I'd love to see
like,
it. Yeah.
Wow, an icon. But no, I mean, I think I meet sort of lots of people through things. But I'd say Davina's probably one person that I met, and I was like, wow, you are like super cool. Just exactly as you imagine it to be, genuine, kind, nice. And then, I'm lucky that I get to sort of meet a few people through different things. But most people are pretty down to earth. They're pretty cool,
That's one thing.
Normal people.
That's one thing I've learned about over the years. We've spoken to many celebrities, whether it's Biscuit, You Suck, whatever it is we've been doing over the years. And that's what I learned very, very quickly is people are just not, like, I think Charlie Adlard was the first person that came around my house. And I was kind of like, "Oh my God, it's Charlie Adlard. Come here." I had to sit down. He was just so down to earth. And I was kind of like, what was I worrying about,
Yeah. I mean, the one person that I sort of didn't really think of at the time, because I never really noticed it. But when I first met Jenny, I said, "Oh, do you want to come back to Parks?" She used to live in Henley. So we went back down, and I said, "Oh, we're going to a party." She's like, "Where is it?" "Oh, it's a friend's house, a lad I went to school with." And anyway, we went to his house, and I never really thought of it as much, but we got there, and like you get to the end of this drive in Henley, and like we got to like walk up this long drive, and there's like a big party, and there's like a big thing, and there's bands going on, and all sorts of stuff, and food, and we're just chilling around, sort of like drinking and doing other stuff, and this guy comes and sits down, and we're sort of chatting away to him, and at the end of the night, Jenny's like, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's George." Who's George? "Oh, George Harrison."
No.
Yeah, and we used to go, because I went to school with Danny, so
wow.
We used to just sit, and George would just come around and sit with you and just chill out, basically, because he used to stay in his house. He didn't really go out very often, and it was Danny's 21st. So like, the first party I ever took Jenny to, we went to George Harrison's house. But I speak to people like my mates who I went to school like Manchester College with, and they're like, "What? You went to George Harrison?" Because like, that is like the ultimate icon. I mean, obviously now you look at it and you go, okay, fair enough. Like, and I love the Beatles, but at the time it was just my mate's dad, and it was just good. It's the things like that you look back on, you're like, that's pretty crazy.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, so that was probably one of the nicest things that growing up, sort of meeting someone like that, an absolute icon. When you look back how much they achieved is mental. And obviously Danny's doing a lot now actually of what his dad used to do, so he's sort of really sort of an amazing musician in himself. Yeah, so it's
wonderful.
Cool. Yeah.
And now you hit the Brompton Cookery School as well. How's that going there?
Yeah, good. Yeah, busy. Lots going on, so we're doing a lot of that, and then I do a lot of consultancy out of that. So a lot of shows coming up this year. I've actually managed to. I just try and put myself out, because like I said earlier, I always try and do different things. So I'm conscious I'm always teaching and cooking, and actually a lot of time I work on my own, which is fine unless I'm working for clients. So I wouldn't say I miss the camaraderie of the kitchen, but I always want to learn and go and do different events. So I might say I'm going to go here, I'm going to do that. And again, over the years I've done big events, I've gone to work at different things. Again, Michael Caine actually went down to Ascot one year and helped him just for a day, because I was doing some filming somewhere else. And actually this year I've got I contacted a friend of mine who's exec chef for Tom Kerridge, and just said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He mentioned a while ago that they used to do the Monaco Grand Prix. Wow. So I was like, "Oh, look, I'll come and work." So I am going as a chef, so I'm labour basically, but I get paid for it. So yeah, I'm going to the Monaco Grand Prix in May. So I've got like a week of work, basically.
That's very suave, isn't it? It's about as suave as
yeah, well, I don't know whether suave might be the word when you're a chef, and you're going to be like, we'll be up at probably 6 a.m. We'll probably work most of the day, but I'm going to be running one of the terraces. So I think Tom and a few of the guys are going to be on one of the back of the yachts, which will be over the track, and then we have terraces which run over there. It's all some really nice stuff like Tom Kerridge stuff, Scotch eggs, quiches, but all like buffet style. But I'll be running one of the terraces and doing that for one of the sections. So that's nice. A few few events, stuff like that, which is quite nice. So that's just different. It's a bit random as well, because you're like, but at the same time, great, because I've never been to the Grand Prix.
It's different, isn't it? It's an adventure every single day.
And I think that's what you got to do. You got to do the stuff. I mean, I trekked to Peru last year, and that was exciting.
I remember that.
I'd like to do more stuff like that. I'd love to do more foodie LinkedIn. I mean, when I was there, we went and stopped off just before we trekked up to.
That was just before Pod Aid.
Yeah, and it was a funny old one, because I was supposed to be doing it with a friend of mine, Ewan Thomas, who was a sprinter, and he was doing it, and he actually persuaded me to do it because he was the celebrity. And then 2 weeks before he was due to do it, he pulled out. So I knew no one. So I was doing it on my own, and I was like, I'm going to Peru. I'm like leaving Jenny and the kids just on my own. Like go down to London, got the thing. And actually, it was
how's your Spanish? Is it good?
Yeah, it was limited. But I mean, look, it was a really nice group and got on really well. And it was really, really good to do. But when we're there, I'm like, I mean, like the first thing I did when I got there, I got my backpack and I went straight out, and I'm going around Cusco, and I'm finding like markets, and there's just incredible food and ingredients, and I'm like taking all this footage, and I'm like, oh my god, I should just be like, if I could be filmed doing this and eating stuff. It was just incredible. And we found a little place. They stopped off on the bus before we went to trekking up to Macho, and you've got these little sort of like coves, it's just little villages, and out the back we went for this random little sort of thing where there's a toilet and a little kitchen, and out the back they've just got this oven, which, no joke, like a wood-fired oven, is the size of your kitchen. And literally it was just massive, and they've got like suckling pigs just roasting in there, and they just basically cook them off, and then the locals just come and like they just pull a few off, and you just have pork, bit of crackling, bit of like rice, and that's it. And it's like cheap as chip. I was loving it.
I've seen something similar to that. My wife's from Colombia, so we were used to
nice.
When we go over there, they take us to the mountains, La Calera, and the huts, like you just imagine, like the whole hut is just like a barbecue, the whole thing, and they're doing sausage meats, the potatoes. There's
but you got like the pants and socks hanging on the washing line next to the oven. I mean, it's not there's probably a few rats running around, but it's just so
amazing,
real, and that's why I love like the food and travel. I mean, my ultimate thing, if I spoke to someone who does a bit of work as a producer the other day, and I'm like, my ultimate thing, if someone said, what is your dream job? My dream job is to travel around the world, cook and eat and film it. That would be my dream job, like, because to learn.
If anybody's listening to this, wants to give Marcus a job.
Well, exactly. And actually, I mean, if I could do it, I'd do it, And I think some people are now. They just pack up and go, do you know what? Well, let's just do it, I know some friends of ours are doing the same. They're selling their house in Shrewsbury. They're buying a boat, and they're going to travel around the world with the kids. And the kids are similar age to ours. They're just going to take out.
It's a brave thing to do, isn't it?
It is, but for as a life thing, I mean, like how incredible is that? You'd learn so much more traveling and being. And actually, another lady I know, Sarah William, who used to be one of the Dragon's Den. She did that one year. She took, I think it was a year and a half out, and they travelled around Australia, around the world with the kids. The kids were young. I mean, obviously she's got a fair few quid compared to most people, but they travelled, and she said it was the most incredible experience for the kids, and they just sort of homeschooled as they're going along.
I'd love to.
Amazing.
I'd love to do something around family, like around the world, because I think family dynamics are so different, different cultures around the world.
Oh, massively, yeah.
Just to go and stay a night in someone's house and see what it's like, just to see how the family works. Because
fly on the wall.
Oh, no, it's just be amazing. I remember, obviously, again, going to Colombia, you can't just walk into a room full of family and go, hi guys, I'm going to go put the kettle on. You got to go and say hello to everybody individually, and then say goodbye to everybody individually.
Yeah.
We don't do that in the UK.
No.
And that seemed really ignorant
to do.
Just give the
room a wave. Bye
Different
hey guys.
cultures, different ways of doing things. And I think that's, it's really important actually, that whole sort of ethos of culture and lifestyle and even food relates into that massively, like how people eat and when they eat and what they're eating and what they're doing. And I think Anthony Bourdain was one of those this classic sort of food and travel.
His shows are just amazing,
and they are great. But I mean, I think a modern day version of that. I mean, I even just love watching like Rick Stein just traveling around doing like France and stuff, because every culture is so different. And I think food is one thing that brings people together, and I think that's why, you could probably do it in the UK. I mean, we've got some incredible foods around the UK and small businesses that are creating just exceptional stuff.
We obviously, we'll end with this because I know we're running over time. We obviously need a transatlantic food show where we exchange food, exchange recipes. Like, I'm still trying to get Tom in Vermont to make a toad in the hole, because I was like,
yeah, nice, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's something they don't do in America. And we were looking at pizzas on the Alan Tom of. Oh, make sure you check out my toe, my toe. Check out my new show. And we were talking about pizzas, and we were just going through the Domino's menu, and I was like, yeah, there's chicken, there's this, and there's sweet corn. He's like, sweet corn? Did you say sweet corn on a pizza?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, there's this one. And he's like, there's more than one. He's going nuts, because apparently they don't put sweet corn in pizza in America.
Yeah.
And, it's simple little things like that. Little things like that.
Yeah, but I think I've done a couple of events for, I did one for like Patron Tequila, Mexican brand, and then I've done quite a few events for Havana Club, the Cuban brand. And I'd never travelled to Cuba, I've never travelled to Mexico. And I got sort of given a guideline of this is what you want to create, and I had to do that off the back of either people I knew who lived there, so I had a lot of talking, a lot of research, and I created loads of like dishes and menus with my own tweak and style from like Cuban stuff. And we had some real big sort of iconic people from Cuba who had been there, who were involved in like film and art and culture, who came to some of the dinner events, and they're like, food's amazing, like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, how long did you spend in Cuba? I'm like, never been. I wanted to go, we didn't have time to send me, but so I think it's really important how that element of take as well, so like getting influence from those places and going, because that's what I love as well. Like you said to me, right, there's 4 ingredients, there's 5 ingredients, right, I want you to create that. That's like me, that's like me all over. And I think doing that whole thing of you traveling around going, right, these are the core things of Mexican cuisine, Cuban, and then making your own version, it's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing how many different things there are.
Amazing. And the podcast ends just there. I tried to be bold and brazen and end the podcast in a very unpredictable way, and it just didn't sound great. It was one of those opportunities where I took a chance and it didn't quite work. So I thought I'd just interrupt you there and say, episode end, Finn, it's finished. Thank you, Marcus, for joining us on the show, of course. Great. Always great chatting to him. And Verity, always on point. Absolutely fantastic. So please, if you're listening to the Shrewsbury Biscuit for the first time, give us a follow on social media. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, we are on LinkedIn, and we are on, what's the other one? TikTok. We're on TikTok too. We like to throw out the visuals there. For an audio-only podcast at the moment, we like to look good too. So give us a follow, and thank you so much for tuning in to our great show. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in. Peace out.